Hello everyone. In today's video we will set up a skill tree. For the first video we will focus on using experience and levels to unlock new melee combos. In order to do all of this, we actually need to set up a lot, so I thought it would be best to do it in separate videos. In our skill tree UI you can see basic, combat and magic skills. We'll focus on combat solely for this video. In order to do this we will need Unity, Game Creator, the Melee and Stats module. Before we start, I would of course like to thank all of my Patreon supporters for the absolutely amazing support. Now, before setting up our scene, I'd like to go over what we're actually doing here. So we're using the built-in stats and experience system. You can change all of these values. I didn't do that just to be sure that we can actually share all of this as well. So by default, if our level is 1 and I equip my weapon, this is the only combo I have. So 1/forward and that's pretty much it. Well, not pretty much, that's all there is to it. Now, if I grab these orbs, I will gain experience. So you can see the bar fill up. And this is really fast, you know, I know that. And those values are definitely something you should, well, you don't have to, but I'd recommend changing. Now pick up the second one. We have the material of our player character change. This is just to show how you could have a type of effect if you level up. Now this material change isn't the prettiest way to do it, but it's just an example just to point you in the right direction. Now if I open up this skill level, you will see our level here as well, and this button basically has a condition to only execute if our level is 2 or higher. So if I press on this now, it will swap the image for the third skill, which would be locked, and this one will activate, so it will swap image as well. Now this third one has a condition that you can only, well, basically click on it and execute its actions if this one is already unlocked, so to speak. So now if I equip my weapon, it looks like we have our duo combo. There's no third step yet, so it's just 2 steps. It looks like the same weapon, but it's actually not. So we did actually swap weapon here, and that's all based on conditions as well. Now the equip button is still the same, so the player doesn't actually notice a difference whatsoever, but which item it actually grabs from our project file depends on these conditions. So we'll go through how to set all of that up. Now if I go and grab all of those lost orbs and we hit level 4 and I go to this menu, I can unlock this one as well because the requirement is to be at least level 4. Then if I equip my weapon again same button, so the player doesn't notice any change. Suddenly we have our third combo unlocked as well. So yeah, pretty cool. This is what we'll cover in today's video. As you can see, we'll cover other things here as well, but we need to do quite a lot for this, so I thought it would be best to actually do separate videos on those things. So let's set up our scene. So in order to set this up, you don't really need much. I use this scene, but all you really need is a player and some melee actions. So my player has these melee actions copied over from the melee example. So we have the simple trigger for attack, block and evade, and I think by default there were some more, I removed those. But yeah, that's all you really need to start. Now we don't have anything to equip because I removed the default equip trigger. That's something I would definitely advise because we're going to use a manual button for this, and that manual button actually will hold a lot of conditions. So quite important. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look up sword, and we will find the default sword weapon. On the right we will see that you have 3 combos. So if you click once, he will attack, do the first combo, second, third. I'm going to disable the second and third here. I'm going to duplicate this and again. And the first one, this one will have the second as well, and this one will have both. So that's quite important. There's no way to unfortunately call this without coding. I'm not going to do that obviously, because we're going to keep this all game creator related. But basically another way to do this is have 3 different weapons. Now for the player there won't be a difference, so that's quite important here. For the player it will look like the same weapon, but we're actually having different combos on each weapon. Now next up, what we're going to do is we're going to create some orbs to pick up. Now I'm using orbs to gain experience. Obviously you can do that after each kill. The orbs are just an example. So let's create our first orb here. Doesn't really matter where. So I'm going to right click 3D object sphere. It's really big. There we go. Now you can do this on pickup by clicking on it. I'm just going to make the collider a trigger. That way when we walk through it, we will pick up our orb. There we go. Collapse all of this. I'm going to add a trigger. Going to do a on player enter. There we go. And we're going to add some actions. Well, not some, just one really. And we're going to look up stats, and we're going to do change stats, and we're going to pick experience. So experience is a default stat that is set up. Just make sure you have these stats examples installed as well. And we're going to add 20 here, and yeah, that's it. So we're going to add 20 experience. Let's drag this in, and let's give this a red color. There we go. So we have a red color, and this is our experience orb. So really simple, nothing all too exciting. I'm going to duplicate this twice. So in order to level up to level 2 with the default formulas, etc., which I'm going to keep for now, is you need 2 orbs. So yeah, let's keep that. Going to duplicate these again, move them a bit further away so I can't accidentally pick them up, and we're going to add a couple others. There we go. A lot of other orbs. So these orbs will give us experience. Now we need to be able to track this, of course. So we will need to, well, take a couple of other steps really. And we're going to do this in the player UI. So let's focus on our UI. So we'll go into 2D view. And there we go. Now let's add a panel here. UI panel, where are you? There you go. Going to keep it under our ammo, health, etc., just to keep everything together. Going to do a square here, no rounded edges. Perfect. Let's make sure Gizmos is on again. I'm going to turn on the grid for a moment just to make sure I'm keeping things a bit centered here. There we go. Now let's turn this background off. I don't need to actually see it. And on this panel, let's rename it first to level. I'm going to add 2 text objects. So UI, text. Let's make this white so we can actually read it as well. That would be nice. There we go. But here is fine. And let's duplicate that. And we're going to put it on the other side of the center. Alignment like this, and maybe a bit closer. That's a bit too far apart. There we go. Now we don't need to do anything with the text, so we don't need to create the text because we're going to add the stat UI component. So in previous videos I've used the attribute UI, but experience is not an attribute, it's a stat. So we're going to do experience. Oh, we're going to do level here, sorry. And we're going to use these tags to auto-populate, so this will be the name, which is level basically, and this will be the value, and that shows which level we are. Then I'm going to simply duplicate this one, rename it to experience, and let's drag this down. Going to keep it the same height, etc. if possible as the other bars. Not necessary, just, you know, looks nicer. There we go. Going to remove the text, and the default color will be black and more grayish and semi-transparent, so not completely. Maybe the bar is a bit big. Let me make that a tiny bit smaller at least. But let's try to keep it. Let's try to keep it centered. Looks about right, not 100% sure, but that's okay. Then we're going to add an image. And this image will basically be the fill bar. There we go. Let's make this a square as well. Perfect. Now we need to add a image, so a source image, otherwise we won't have these options because we need to set this to filled, horizontal and left. Now this will be the color used for our bar here. I'm going to use some sort of bluish, something like that. Yeah, seems fine. Now if you have the stats examples installed as well, you will have some default values set. So I'm going to hit play and see what this actually looks like. So as you can see, it's already filled, which is not what we want, but it displays our level. So we need to add a different action to our experience here, and as you can see, we have level. Now this level needs to be different, so it's not going to be an actual level, it's not even going to be experience, it's going to be next level. So basically this bar fills up until you reach the next level. That's kind of the idea here. So we need to drag that image into the fill, just like with the health bar, etc. And then when we hit play again, you will see it's no longer blue. I'm going to pick up one orb here, and it fills. I forgot to turn on this destroy on those orbs. Let me do that as well. But as you can see, it filled and our level changed. So really cool. So that's mostly it actually for our UI. It's not much we need to do here. Going to keep these because we'll copy them over for our skill tree as well. So let me select all of these first. No, I can't do it. But make sure destroy after finishing is turned on. And that would have been nice if I would have done that beforehand, but oh well. And there we go. So once the action is complete, it will destroy the objects. So that's what we need. Perfect. So that's it for our player UI. All functional, all good. Maybe this is actually a horrible color, but oh well. Got to make it a bit brighter. Maybe that's better. Anyway, it doesn't matter much. And we're going to add our next empty here. So I'm going to add an empty. And we're going to call this skill tree. I think skill tree is a fine name for what it is. Going to drag all of these in there just to make sure our hierarchy is not too full. Now before we actually go set that up, I want to add a couple of things to my player. So let's go to our player here, and we have our melee actions. And in here, in our melee actions, I'm going to add a trigger. There we go. And let's call this trigger key down. I'm going to use Q here because it's close to the default move buttons and feels quite right. So this will be our equip. Now this equip will actually need conditions. So these will be added. Going to rename these just to make sure we can actually keep track of what we're doing here. So let's call this equip. And yeah, this equip will need a lot. So we'll be doing a lot in this one. Not everything can be set up right now, but I want to add a couple of things already. So I'm going to add a clause. There we go. The alternative to our conditions will be sheet. There we go. That way we can use the same button to equip and unequip, so sheet, unsheet our weapon. So this will be the else. There will be several alternatives here, and they will rely on these empties. So I'm going to call this combo 1 active. Let me duplicate these. Oh, no need for that. There we go. Combo 2 active and 3 active. Perfect. Now I'm going to turn these off because these will be activated once we actually unlock different skills. So by default we can only do 1 combo, 2 combos, 3 combos. And we're going to set up our condition. So if our player is unarmed and combo 1 is active, we will draw weapon, the default weapon. There we go. Going to add another clause. Going to copy over these conditions. If combo 2 is active, we're going to draw the second version of the same weapon, and we're going to add another clause. New actions again. We can just copy these over again. And if combo 3 is active, then we are going to draw the last version of the weapon with all combos ticked on. So that's it. I'm going to test this out, make sure this works as well. So I'm going to hit play here. There we go. Now if I pick up these orbs, they'll disappear, which is nice. And if I hit Q, we have our weapon, and I can repeat the trigger, but all it does is the first part of the combo. That's it. So nothing else is unlocked here. So really cool. If I hit Q again, he will sheath his weapon. And yeah, that's it. So far everything is working exactly like it should. So just to make it a bit cleaner, I'm going to group these together. Makes it a bit easier to find. Now that we've set that up, we are going to start with our skill tree. Now our skill tree has all of these. I'm going to add a canvas here. Where are you, canvas? I'm going to drag that in. I'm going to rename this canvas to UI, just to make sense. These settings, so the type of scale we're doing here, it completely depends on what you want, so wouldn't worry about it too much. Now sort order is important. It needs to come in front of our default UI, so I'm gonna hit 2 here, and there we go. So yeah, that's our UI, so really straightforward. We have all of these. Now our skill tree is going to, so this empty is going to have a couple of actions. So I'm going to add a trigger, key down. I'm going to use P here as a really random button to open this up. At some point I will integrate this into my default UI, but there's already so much work to do that for now I'm just going to keep it absolutely separate. So we have P to open up our skill tree, and let's add those actions here, just a bit easier. There we go. Going to be a really simple set active of UI, which means by default we'll turn it off, and time scale, because time needs to be paused. There we go. So time will be paused and our UI will open up. I'm going to add another trigger, which is not really related to the UI, but still to skill, so that's why I'm adding it here. You could add this wherever you want, but it's more to demonstrate how you do it. So on stat change, player, and we're going to do level here. On change, we're going to add a effect. Now the default effect I'm using is not pretty, but it's just to demonstrate how you could go about this. So I'm going to do a change material here. There we go. Let's add a wait, so we'll see that change for 2 seconds, and I'm going to do the same. Now this is the material of the body of the player, so let's open up the character. I'm going to drag in the body. Now I made a really simple material for this, as it is a simple effect. So I have level up, which basically is just a white, and you have a emission which is a bit bright, and yeah, that's it. So nothing all too spectacular, but let's do, okay, so we selected that, and we're going to drag in our level up. So this will display on his body for 2 seconds, and then we are going to just change back to the default material, which is white. And there we go. So for 2 seconds we see his material changes, sort of a glow, and we turn back to white. So really simple effect, but at least this shows you how you could mess around with this. Obviously using particle effects would be a lot prettier, but you get the point. It's just a demonstration. Cool. So we're done with this. We know it works, and now we actually need to create this UI. So I'm going to add a background here. There we go. And it's going to be black. Now, because the sort order of this UI was 2, it will display on top of the default player UI. So let's rename this background. There we go. Now I'm going to add a couple of items here. So let's do a text. There we go. Let's do skill tree or skills. It's better. White text. And yeah, that's the middle. Perfect. There we go, skills. Not pretty, but you know, it does what it's supposed to do. I'm going to add another here, which is game creator and then UI button. I'm going to keep that in background just to group all of the things that are unrelated together. So 160 by, well, that's a bit much. Let's make it a bit smaller. That's alright. So this will be the close button because it's not integrated into anything else right now. So I'm going to use, I think it's called cross. No, can't remember what I called it. Let's look it up. Oh, close. That makes a lot more sense. So I made a simple, really simple close sprite, and that's it. And we're going to add the action of time scale back to 1 and set active, and we're going to turn off our UI. Make sure you turn off the UI, not the actual skill tree parent, but just UI, because that's all we're doing. Cool. So yeah, really simple close button, and just to make sure we can get back. Now the next thing we'll need to do as well is need to create a bit of a layout here. So I'm going to keep it simple for now. So I'm going to add a text again. There we go. So this will be combat. Let's make this all capital letters. There we go. Yeah, about here is fine. Perfect. So big text, combat, and this will be the category of our skills. So I'm going to rename this to combat as well, and we're going to group all of the buttons related to combat in here, just to make sure we keep things a bit organized. Now let's add a couple of buttons here. So game creator button again. I'm going to set up one first, just to make sure we have most of the things the same just for all of these buttons. So yeah, 100 is fine. There we go. Now by default these buttons will have text. We don't need the text, we're going to remove that. I made a simple sprite that represents a circle. For some reason it's really sharp when you zoom in, but when you zoom out it gets a bit weird, but oh well, that's fine. I'm not going to mess with the default color here. I made all of these white, so it's easy to just change them into, well, anything else really. So yeah, I don't know. Seems about right. And I'm going to copy this over for our selected, because, well, maybe you could change this as well. I'm not going to change the color of the item. Maybe I should actually, but yeah, I'm not really sure. Anyway, going to keep it the same for now. So this will have an action that is actually called conditions. That's quite important. There's, by default, it's actions, but we need conditions for this button. So this button will be combat skill 1 button. It's a bit of a long name, but you know, at least we know exactly what we're doing. I'm going to drag that into combat here. And this will have a image, and the image is going to be this sprite. Now again, this is a really simple sprite I made, so it's nothing special, it's just a sword. But this represents, you know, only having one strike basically in your combo. That was the idea. So I'm going to leave this white, and I'm not actually going to do anything else with this button because the default one strike is unlocked. So, you know, it's nothing special here. We can even remove this call conditions for this one. But yeah, this first skill will by default be unlocked. You can at least strike once. Let's not exaggerate, otherwise it wouldn't really be melee. And we're going to duplicate this one, and this will be skill 2. Still a button, and there we go. Now I'm going to drag this a bit higher. There we go. I'm going to change the default sprite here. Where are you? So image, and it will look like this. Now, because this is not unlocked, I don't want it to be white. I want it to be a different color. And again, you can do a lot more, change buttons, etc. It's just for demonstration purposes. So we have our default image here. So that's the default one. Going to add the call conditions to this one, and we're going to add conditions. So game creator conditions. Don't know why it says 6, because I don't have 6 here, but that's fine. And let's make sure we drag this in. While testing this, I kept forgetting to do that and always thought it wasn't working. So yeah, make sure it's actually selected. Going to duplicate this image, so it needs to be lower in the hierarchy, and this will be white, so that's what we see once it's unlocked. Now obviously by default it isn't, so I'm going to set it as inactive, and we're going to create our conditions here. Now the conditions for this basically unlock skills. And the way we set it up is that which weapon will draw is based on this. So it's actually not that much we need to do. We need to set the condition, so that's a stat related condition. So stat value of level needs to be greater or equal than 2. So we need to be at least level 2. Now the reason I have buttons that you need to select to unlock the skills is because at the end of this series I want to show a alternative that works like Assassin's Creed, where you actually have skill points, and unlocking skills actually cost skill points. It works a lot the same, but that's why I have buttons that unlock these skills. So for now everything will just be free, as it were. So all you need to do is just have a certain level, and later we'll look at how to use skill points instead of just your required skill level. So that's why these are buttons you need to unlock. So thought it would be pretty cool because that's what I'm going for myself. So let's create some actions here. We don't need anything else. There's, nothing else happens if you click this. But in else, you could, for example, have a pop-up saying, skill level too low. So that's what you could do in else. So if he clicks, it doesn't have the level, add a, image here with text saying your level is too low, something like that. But by default, we're not using that one. So first action will be set active. There we go. We're going to activate this image. So that needs to be activated now. And this one needs to be deactivated. So let's do that first. So we'll turn off the gray one and we'll turn on the white one. So again, this only happens if our level is high enough. And let's duplicate this. So we're going to turn off combo 1 active. And we're going to turn on combo 2 active. So yeah, pretty straightforward. And let's sheet weapon as well. Now for some reason this doesn't always work correctly, but once we press this button I want to sheet the player weapon as well, so that you have to unsheet again just to make sure that we're actually using the right version of the weapon. So that's not everything, but that's everything so far. I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to rename this. There we go. And this last one will be slightly easier and at the same time slightly more complex. So yes, the default button, let me just duplicate that first before removing it. There we go. So the default button will actually be a lock, just to show you it is actually closed. So let me turn that off. And the reason for that is that even if your level is high enough, so this will require level 4, even if your level is high enough, you need to have this one unlocked before you can unlock this one. And again, maybe this is aiming a bit towards the whole skill point system rather than... Still too big. Oh, I'm changing the wrong one here. Maybe that's geared more towards the whole skill point system, so that could definitely be the case. But I think it's pretty cool to, even if you're not using a skill point, just a level requirement, to make sure that, we actually have combo 2 unlocked before we unlock 3, because as you can remember, the third version of the weapon has all combos unlocked. So this needs to, that's the requirement basically. Now to show that it is unlocked, what we're going to add in this one is when we go to our conditions, I'm going to duplicate this again, and we're going to turn off our lock here. And yes, naming is important, as you can see, so let's actually rename this one to lock image. There we go. Just to make sure we can actually differentiate. And then we're going to set this one active. Now in these conditions, the requirement is level 4. And we're still going to deactivate something, but this time it will be combo 2, and we're going to activate combo 3. So same type of routine, nothing all that different. And well, there's not a fourth one, but you could add a fourth combo, 5th, 6th, 7th, whatever you want. An auto finisher is a nice fourth one, for example. But yeah, then you just need to repeat those steps with the next one unlocking as well. So just the same type of setup. So let me make sure that this image is actually going to be white as well. So, and the correct melee skill. So let's drag in skill 3. And this one needs to be skill 3 as well. There we go. Turn this one off. So yeah, these are the conditions we need to set up for all of this, and that will be mostly it. Now I'm sure something went wrong, because it always does, so we're going to test this out. There we go. So I'm going to unsheath the weapon. Just make sure it's still the default one. Yep, it's still the default one. I'm going to pick these up, open up this one, and when we click here, well, the image is a bit too big, but it unlocks that one. Now I want to make sure this doesn't work. And I actually forgot to set up the additional condition to make sure that even if we're forward, this still needs to be unlocked. So we're going to do that as well. Now let's close that. Saw the text in the cross still appear as well, so I need to remove that. Go to equip, and now we have our second combo unlocked. Now before we continue, let's actually fix a couple of those small mistakes here. So this needs a additional condition, so let's make sure that's set up. So in our conditions, and let's add a active. Now the easiest way to actually do this, as you remember, if we unlock this skill, we are going to activate the 3 swords that well, basically this one is going to be set active. Now how can we make sure that, you know, this can only be unlocked if this one was unlocked? By making sure this is activated. So this can only be activated if we click, well, unlock this skill basically. So that's a nice way to add that condition. Really simple. I'm going to make those swords a tiny bit smaller because apparently they're too big. That's better, they fit inside. And this button needs to be without a text. There we go. Now next up, I want to add the UI elements as well that actually, you know, show our level. So we already set those up, so all we really need to do here is actually copy them over. User interface, and we have level and experience. So let's just copy this over. There we go. And let's make sure that part of the UI. Makes more sense to have these on top. Now the text is a bit blurry, I'm not really sure why in all honesty, but that's okay. And yeah, in background let's actually move skill here. So skills is here and we have our text here. Not really sure why the text is blurry, it's a bit strange. If I add a new text, maybe that will be sharp. So what is the size here? Interesting. Maybe it's because we use a different resolution. I'm not really sure. Could definitely be a part of it. Yeah, doesn't really seem to help all that much. I'm pretty sure it's going to be resolution related, so let's cheat a bit and make this double. go. Yeah, it's a bit sharper. It's a bit better. Maybe still not perfect, but at least it fits. There we go. So going to have level in the same place actually makes a bit more sense instead of moving it around the UI all the time. So cool. Seems like we have everything now though, so let's give this a second try and make sure it works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up all of the experience at once and make sure we can only unlock the third condition. Let's make sure that this doesn't work either. No, nothing happens. Cool. Perfect. Yeah, so we can't unlock this one. We need to unlock this first. Now this is unlocked and we can unlock that as well. Going to unsheet and we have our third combo. Cool. So there was just one thing that didn't seem to work, and that was our material change on level up. Let's see why that didn't work. We have the actions set up correctly, so nothing seems to be wrong here. But nothing is actually calling those actions. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Let's try this again. And pick up these orbs. And there we go. Perfect. So yeah, that's it really. That's all you need to do in order to set up this first part of the skill tree. Now, given the time it took us to set this all up, it makes a lot of sense to have separate videos covering the other aspects as well. So what we're going to do in the other tutorials is we're going to unlock magic skills. So basically have different abilities, and we're going to have the basic category which will cover stat changes. So things like more health, more damage, etc. So something to look forward to for our next videos. So hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.